the short story is a great medium, and if you read the sort of great Harlan Ellison short stories or Kafka stories or any of these things, they're really beautiful, and the brevity of language and the sharpness of the point of the film or the point of the storytelling is the most important thing. I thought if I could make 2 short films, one funny, silly one, which ended up being this film called The Week Before, and one I wanted to make a very sort of kind of melancholic, somber little film, and I loved Venice, and I wrote it in Venice, so it was set in Venice, a little ghost story set in Venice, and that was called Neon. I met producer Simon Moorhead, and he introduced me to a director of photography, Tony Shern, and I'd started to do a little bit of work with a little team of effects guys, and they kind of all dissipated, but one of them stayed with me, Max McMullen, and that was the little team that made these commercial things and a couple of music videos, and then made the short films. And we've just done everything. We just built on this little team. If we'd needed somebody else, we've brought them into the fold. But it's been the same little group. I've loved all kinds of films through the years, and probably the most important influence was seeing a book as a kid. I must have been thinking about this maybe 8 or 9. I found a book of horror movies in a shop, and I managed to. I think I actually had the money saved to buy this one book, and I've still got it. And it's got, lots of pictures of horror movies through to the 80s. But the ones that I really loved, these photographs that I really loved, were the very early silent films, and they had some Méliès films, stills from those, and stills from Faust and Murnau's films and Dreyer's films, Vampire, and all of the more recent ones, the films from the 50s and 60s and 70s. What you could see what was going on very clearly, and the axe was in the guy's head, and there was blood, or it was Dracula, and he was like this, and it was really very, very clear. But these early films, it was hard to really make out what they were and what was going on, and they were a bit blurry and a bit strange, and I couldn't quite, and they worried me for that. The look of the film was dictated by a few factors. One of them is because I wanted to do something that just looked like my kind of film, so it looks like my illustrations and my paintings, which tend to look drawn, handmade, and collaged and pieced together by hand. Most of the images that I make now are made with computers, they're made with Photoshop, but most of the raw materials are still handmade. They're paintings and drawings and sculptures and real photographs of things. So I wanted the film to look like that. And narratively that's correct. We're inside a dream from this young girl who draws her world. She covers the walls of her bedroom and her caravan in the circus with her drawings, sort of defining her world in these flights of fancy, these drawings and paintings and collages. So it should look fake. It should look slightly flat. It should look like she drew it. It also was defined by budget. The fact is that photoreal CG work is just time-consuming. It takes a lot of time to make sure the lighting and the textures are right and everything's absolutely perfectly accurate. The rendering time is very high because the bounce light has to be perfectly natural. And it's all achievable, and it's a huge technical achievement when it all works. But it just seems to me like quite a limited target, where we're in a digital world and you can just do anything, you can go anywhere. I think in the future, certainly what I'd like to do next is pursue many more different kinds of stories that can still create the kinds of images that you would associate with big budget films, but really start to use it to tell unusual stories. Really, you can do anything at home with a Mac and some software that anybody in Hollywood or anybody else is doing. So it really comes down to the ideas. It really comes down to what sort of film you want to do, what you want to say, something you feel passionate about, something you want to tell people, something that makes you laugh. And just do it. I kind of have a feeling that it feels like another huge step in film history, really. It's almost like as big a step as that is in the 20s, the move to sound. I think a whole new way of dealing with film, a whole different kind of film is going to come out of this.
Mirror Mask was conceived over about 3 years ago, from the point where we're at today. We had taken a look at some of the titles that were performing extremely well for us, like The Labyrinth and Dark Crystal, and what we found is that there are a number of fans out there that were pretty consistent about trying to find The Labyrinth and Dark Crystal on video and DVD. So we decided to take a look at that genre, given the Henson Company's heritage in the genre of fantasy.
I had seen Dave's film the week before, as well as some of his short films, and he had that beautiful rock video in which he had created the dancer inside of an entire computer-generated world. And each piece that I saw was extremely unique and so unusual, and yet I knew that he kind of made these all by himself and just with his friends and not in a big Hollywood way. So when we were casting about for a way to do an original fantasy movie in the spirit of those movies that we did years ago, this seemed like the most interesting thing to do. And I had never even met Dave, but of course felt that I knew him through his very close relationship with Neil. And I called Neil and asked him if he thought that Dave would be interested in directing a feature-length fantasy piece. And Neil was really excited about the idea of Dave directing something, and we had a little back and forth about whether Neil would write it himself, because I didn't know if he would have the time or if we would be able to even get him to write a screenplay for us. And he said, well, it's just going to fit into my schedule and I will make it work no matter what if Dave is directing. So immediately we had this very top-notch fantasy team on the project, and at that point I would say as a company the main thing we tried to do is get them freedom, get them a situation where they could create a story that they were happy with and kind of let them go free.
I think what makes this a Henson, or at least to me feels like a Henson film, is that it's bold, it's brave, it of course it's a fantasy, and it feels very Henson-esque in its feel, and I think I was saying to somebody the other day, this is something I could see Jim getting very excited about, and understand clearly why Lisa is so excited about the project, because there's sort of something in the Henson family that makes this a very Henson-esque type of movie. And I think it's very exciting, and I'm excited because we're doing something, as I say, that's very ambitious with not a huge amount of money. You go to somebody else, another director, and ask him to do this for the kind of money, and they would just, somebody would laugh at you.
The world of fantasy is universally accepted, no matter where you are. So combine that with maybe some of the slight quirkiness and humor that while isn't something that hits you directly over the head with this particular film, that's going to allow people to watch this multiple times and come back with a little interesting nugget the second or third time that they view it.
It's really rewarding to me that we can be Neil Gaiman's first produced movie. And on the front of Dave McKean, I have to say I feel it very rewarding always to work with somebody on their first film if they're very talented, because I think that Dave is a real director and an exciting talent. And so if I can look back over my own resume and say I was involved with this person or that person on their very first film, it always makes me feel really good.
There was a little girl. She had a little curl right in the middle of her forehead. When she was good, she was very, very good.
Helena.
The storyline is about her journey with her mother and how their relationship works out. And it's sort of very much like every teenage girl, the way she gets on with her mother one moment and the next, it's up and down.
I like the fact it was a family film because I have children, so the thought of being able to watch something with them is very appealing.
I think Valentine's a great character. Most of the parts that I've done before this point have been very different. They haven't been as kind of energetic and free-flowing and in-your-face as Valentine is. So it was great fun. It was like doing theatre, I think. That's the way I approached it. It was very theatrical, which is a contradiction in terms because it's theatrical on film. But I really enjoy just being big and bold and brash.
When I read it, it was. I had to let my brother read it too. I mean, it was amazing because you can picture everything and there's so much going on. I mean, like today I was flying, I was put on a harness, and I've just done so much in it. It's like one of your fantasies when you're a kid. Even now, I mean, it's just the whole cartoon world, and it was amazing.
I hadn't heard of Dave. I didn't realise he was this big noise in kind of art and what have you, fantasy stuff. And then, you know, you put a name into the internet and up comes all this stuff. So I was doing this the other night. I thought, oh my God, and I was looking at some of his art and it's remarkable. So this is his first film and he couldn't have been nicer, really. You know, he's encouraging and he's very open to suggestions, which in some ways is a little odd for someone with such a strong imagination himself. Strong doesn't come near it, does it, with him for his imagination? It's bizarre. So to be so open to the actor's suggestions is great.
I think Dave was fantastic. You know, really knows what he wants and points you in the right direction, and you know, and gives you compliments when you need it, and perks you up when you need to be perked up, and perks you down when you need to be perked down.
I want to say a bad word, I really do, but it really has been so nice. It really has.
I just thought the story was fantastic, and it was a really interesting story and a, you know, brave British film to make. So, you know, it's nice to try and do something that you hope will be fresh and surprise people.
And action.
I suppose the biggest challenge was probably on the roof of the apartment building Brighton. We were 10 floors up. It was quite late at night. All the departments were chasing the shot, which was the sun going down, and unfortunately at the same time there was a lot of traffic around, even though it was 10 floors away. The wind was up, so that was causing a few problems on the sound side. And also, because the wind was up, the waves were up, and the beach at Brighton is stones and rocks, and it was just a racket crashing in at the top. So it was a challenge that we had to rise to.
As soon as you start involving masks of any description, that's the challenges for makeup, is especially if they're part masks, half masks, you've got to match the face to the masks, etc. And then you've got solid masks, and you've got the prosthetic masks to get involved with, so I think it's altogether challenging. It's not a straight makeup.
Normally I do straight things as regards to what you see is what's going to end up on the screen, where this one is a bit different because we're doing a lot more blue screen. So we're doing things where lighting is going to be changed anyway, where normally what I light, how it sees from day one is what we're going to see on the big screen. The way we're lighting this, we know that shadows are going to be put in. We know that light's going to be put in. We know that we have these light balls that are going to be shown. And so that's a bit more of a challenge.
The storyboards have been fantastic. I don't think any of us could have done it without the storyboards. But it is difficult at times to keep up with what he's thinking and what he's planning. And when I say to him, Dave, would you like the door in now? And he says, yeah, this is the door shot. But he's seeing in his mind, it's not actually there. So we've got two prop men bringing on a big door, and he's like, no, we don't want the door on now. But Davey said the door. Yeah, the door, but it's not there. It's computer. Right, okay, get rid of the door.
The main challenge is, as I see it, is getting the right team of people together who understand the work and who are enthusiastic and skillful enough to realise the vision. I think that's my main challenge.
Trying to translate Dave's images through me to get a practical solution at the end. That's been the biggest challenge.
Coming from the BBC, from sort of the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, where drama was done on a far smaller scale, you had a very friendly atmosphere, and I've tried to achieve the same thing on this, keeping the crew to a smaller level so that everyone is integrated, everyone enjoys themselves, everyone has a challenge, that it is a family.
McKean is the film, Dave McKean is the feel of the film, and it's but trying to put your own interpretations of his ideas into it, and it just all flowed. We sat there, we had a great chat. It seemed challenging because the costume was an integral part of the film, which I don't think it is so much in other projects. So that excited me very much. And it was just good to work with Simon and Dave again, period.
You know he's going to do something brave, and that's nice. You know he's going to do something that's going to erode convention, he's going to push boundaries and shove the envelope and all the lines like that. He's always going to do something which may even not have been done before, although everything's been done, of course. But he doesn't know what hasn't been done or what has been done, in the sense that he just goes somewhere by himself, I suppose. And that usually ends up being unique.
Come on, time's up, get it wrong, come on! It's polite conversation or death! Polite conversation or death!
You have to believe us!
They're not listening! I'm not even sure they have ears!
No, I'm not hurt. Thanks for asking. Hello? Hi.
y tus
My
trailers.
name is
Visita mi
Helena.
canal.
They all stare at Malcolm. The monkey bird next to him gives him an offended thump on the back of the head. Malcolm's beak falls off. He sheepishly reaches down and reaffixes the beak to his face.
Well, nice to meet you, Bob. All the Bobs. Malcolm Bobs. I'm looking for something. The charm. Something like a mark. No, like a face. Yes, a face.
Are you having a party down there or something?
Valentine, you should come down. I've made some friends.
That's good. Now that it's settled.
Okay, ready to shoot?
Hit your spine?
No.
Snap mine.
Sound speed, turn over. 684, take one guide track.
Mark.
Regrettable.
I can go. No, I'm not supposed to be here. I can go.
Did you see that?
A few more monkey birds have escaped. Two of them carry Valentine upside down by the ankles. They glide over the city.
Can we go over there, please, toward the border?
Stuart, go straight for it. Okay.
I think we should be doing kitchen sink drama, you know. I think there's all this monkey bird rubbish. It's just... I've lost the faith.
You were the one who said you wanted monkey birds.
Just take her a little bit up, Stuart.
My son roller skates. I said they'll be small, they're easy, we can wind them up. No, you said you wanted monkey birds.
aquí tus trailers, visita mi canal.
So I think, should we just take questions?
Yeah, you can do.
Yeah, you can do.
Have you ever watched Baddiel and Skinner Unplanned? In England, there's a television show called Baddiel and Skinner Unplanned, two comedians, David Baddiel and Frank Skinner, and they had this idea where they just sit down on a couch and talk for half an hour, live, uncut on television. And it starts with a theme song that goes, it'll never work, and ends with, and neither will we again. So I kind of feel like that.
Yes, you were the one. How long did it take to complete the film? Dave and I sat down to plot the film and to write that first draft in February of 2002. So that was exactly 3 years ago. We did the second draft of the script in, I think, April 2002, is that right? We kept expecting it not really to happen. So then May 2003, suddenly we were in the Henson offices in London doing a read-through. In June and July of 2003, Dave shot all of the live-action footage, all of the stuff you saw with them in the circus and so on and so forth. Plus, that was like 2 weeks of shooting, the hospital, the circus, the roof. And then there was, I think, 4 weeks in a blue screen studio. So Dave was done by the end of July 2003. And then he had to start making the movie and creating that thing that you saw, and he handed the finished film in last month. Afterwards, one rather stunned Sony executive looked down at me and Dave and said, that was like John Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast on acid for kids. And that's going on the poster. The inspiration for the story?
Neil had a sort of Prince and the Pauper idea. Do you know the story of the Prince and the Pauper? Yeah. So basically swapped identities between two different worlds. And I had a dream, sort of great long rambling dream about circus and a sick mother and the child sort of heading off into her dreams to try and sort of get control of her life back. I think the idea was that her life was falling apart and the circus was falling apart and her father wasn't handling it very well, and suddenly real life sort of came crushing in on her, and she almost regressed to a simpler state when going into this wall of drawings and this city that she created to try and sort of get control of her life back.
Can you describe for us, what was the collaboration process like?
We always had separate roles, I think. All the books before, we've had pretty well demarcated roles, and the film script was much more of a mush, and we actually had to sit there together and work it out. And I wanted to be around. Initially, I didn't want to, I'm happy not to write it, but I just wanted to be around to make sure that what was being written was going to be doable for such a ridiculously small amount of money and a small amount of time. So that's why I wanted to be around. I didn't realise it was going to cause Neil so much suicidal pain, but it was interesting, and we did work through it. We did both. It was like therapy, we both sat on the couch and we did work through it. And we had lots of Muppets around to help us. Very strange house, wonderful house. It was great, but Jim Henson's house. But there are people who
There are people who like to be surrounded by their own creations and those that don't. I don't. I prefer not to have my own stuff around. I prefer looking at other people's things on the wall. Jim obviously loved to have his own creations around, Muppets everywhere, and a fantastic living room. And it really was great. There was a piano I could play every day. But if you squinted, it looked like a classical sort of Edwardian drawing room. It had big ornate paintings on the wall, oils, statues, sculptures around the mantelpiece and the fireplace. And, you know, if you squinted, it looked just like a Jane Eyre novel or something. And if you sharpened up, suddenly the Degas is actually Miss Piggy in a thing, and the big oil painting is Kermit on a swing, and you know, it was a bit strange, wasn't it? It was a bit odd. And it had a radio that Neil could listen to while he wrote on the bottom floor, so we had to sort of thin air in between. There's 2 floors of air between us, and we tried to come up with a story which was a bit odd because we've worked together a long time. We've done a lot of comics together and a lot of sort of illustrated books and all sorts of things for about 17 years now. I can't believe that. But we've never actually sat in a room together and worked out a project together. And we're completely incompatible. We work in completely different ways and never really realised. And I don't write very much, but I do write sometimes, and I have a particular way of doing it, which is to write everything I know about a story or a project on little, actually telephone index cards. It sounds a bit obsessive, but it has to be telephone index cards, and I write everything I know down on these things and spread them all out on the floor, so I can see the whole project, whether it's a book or a film or something, and then I can shuffle them around, and it's a very visual way of working, and I can fill in the gaps and all that sort of stuff, but I really need to know where the whole territory of the story is like that. And Neil just likes to have a cup of coffee in the morning and fire up the computer and bring some people on stage and see what they say to each other, which drove me absolutely out of my tree.
Apologies if this has already been asked. I was out getting some prima donnas, some tea. How did you guys actually meet and come to work together?
How did we meet and come to work together? I just remember, you know, tripping over this body in an alley, just looking down. He was drunk, he was washed up, he was, you know. And I said, you know, have you ever thought about drawing? We have to get you off the streets. And he said, please, give me money. And I said, no, we have to find you a career. I could give you money, but, you know, give a person a fish and they've got a... And they're creating art, but if you teach them how to fish, then one day they will have a pool full of exploding koi. And
that's absolutely true, oddly enough.
yeah. I was interviewed for the Mirror Mask DVD extras thing, which there's a very shady-looking gentleman just there filming us for that. And one of the questions I was asked was, what is it with Dave McKean and his obsession with masks? And I said, well, I don't know that Dave likes to talk about this, but when he was very small, he was frightened by a man in a mask, and this guy just sort of jumped out at him, and Dave stopped talking to anybody for a while, and the nurses only got him out of it by wearing these funny masks. And it was very peculiar because Simon, our producer, who was doing the interview, was sitting nodding and obviously very pleased that he was finally getting the truth. And it wasn't until I got to the point where I'm saying he's lying there, this little, 5-year-old Dave with this little 5-year-old beard, and he's... Simon realized I had no idea.
The budget was really tight, but Jason Barry, who played Valentine, didn't really realise quite how tight it was when he had to eat the fruit, the future fruit. We had 1 peach. And so he had to get it right first time. He had to 1 peach. I think that was just carelessness, really, but it was kind of the spirit of the film. One, really couldn't afford 2.
Neil, could you tell us about how you got involved with the English translation for Princess Mononoke?
Mononoke, the phone rang. A voice said, hold for Harvey Weinstein.
And when that happens, you do. And Harvey Weinstein got on the phone and he said, have you heard of Princess Mononoke? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I thought about it and I thought, I need the greatest writer. I need the greatest script writer currently out there to turn Princess Mononoke from Japanese into English. I need the best. So I phoned Quentin Tarantino. And I said, Quentin, I want you to write Princess Mononoke. And he said, you don't want me, you want Gaiman. So I'm ringing you, do you want to do it? And I said no. And actually I said, send me a video and I'll see. And he said, I'm not sending you a video, I want you to see it on a big screen. And they flew me down to LA and I saw it and I loved it. And I said yes. So that was that.
A studio during actually production of a film, terrible idea. We had every bug and none of the computers talked to each other, none of them knew each other or were interested in talking to each other at all. But anyway, so I hired just a small team of people. We had 15 people, that's all, and they did the whole film. And what I thought, if I was in their situation, and they were all kids, they were all fresh out of art school. For almost all of them, this was the first job they'd ever done. And what I thought, if I was in their situation, I wouldn't want a usual CG job, which is you get to do the bubbles, or you get to do one tiny little bit of texture or something. It's so decompartmentalized, you're a bit of a cog in the machine. I thought, if I was doing it, I'd like to have my own scene, like a short film within the whole. So that was the plan. So we had a big meeting and talked through the whole film. And so we sort of divvied up the scenes with all the people. And so it worked mostly. Some of them were more interested in animation, some of them were more interested in set building and texture mapping and things like that. So it crossed over a bit, but generally they got to do their scene. And so I designed things, but I didn't really want to nail everything because I wanted to know what they wanted to do and what their input would be. And so it was the best of collaboration, really. They all got excited by the fact that they would be represented in the film properly when it got to their bit. This is my bit, I did this bit. So they all came up with wonderful ideas which expanded from the script in all directions. I always had sort of backup plans in case we ran into problems of how I knew we could do it. But almost never needed them. Almost everybody came up with ideas and ways to amplify and exaggerate and elaborate on the ideas and make it bigger and better. And it was terrific. So I was there really just to keep everything having my line, as it were, so it looks like I drew it. And I did all the texture maps in the film because I feel that's where my colours and textures really come into it. So I did all that. And then I composited the whole film.
I started writing because I couldn't do anything else. I mean, really, you do not want... If I put up a shelf, it will come down. You don't want me driving the taxi that you're in. But I'm really good at making stuff up. That's what I do, that's what I love doing. When I was a little kid, people would tell me not to make stuff up. And they'd never tell me what would happen if I did make stuff up, but they'd say, don't make stuff up, you'll make your stuff up again. And actually, if they do tell you what happens, what actually does happen if you make stuff up is people fly you all over the world. You don't have to get up early in the morning. You get to make movies. It's really cool. So I love making stuff up. I love writing it down. I love making up stories. So that was why I started.
One of the things that I love most about coming to see you, Neil, for your readings and signings is when you sign, you usually do a little doodle of Coraline rats and stars and moons and things.
Don't tell him.
And I was just wondering if there was any chance of you reversing your roles with Neil doing the pictures and Dave doing the writing.
I usually get the book after Neil signed it, so I get Dust Covers has a spread shot at Winchelsea Beach, one of my favourite, most beautiful place to be. I go and sit in amongst nature and the pillars and the water laps, and it's a very beautiful, peaceful, zen-like place. And I get the book, and Neil's drawn a little shark in the water, or little hands coming up. Oh, save me, save me. Little word balloons going, oh, over it.
I think that's his way of telling you that he wants to do it.
Sorry? No, he doesn't do it when I'm there, that's the trouble. I get the book after, and he does much more touring around. That's why he tours around, it's to go out and get out there first. To desecrate my sacred space.
He used to
with
say
his
to me
little
things like,
args and his little shark fins.
He'd say to me
I
things
hate
like,
those little shark fins.
This is the first film Ian's ever scored. Almost everybody in this film, this is the first film they've done. And he's done a terrific job, but he was very, he wanted guidance all the time, and he wanted to know he was doing the right thing, so he was very happy to collaborate. But I think he's going to get a lot of work out of this, because he's done such an amazing job.
Who's the singer who did? Well, Dave and I wrote a song for the final credits.
Yeah.
And then and it's the same singer I think that we're going to see on the clip that we're going to.
Yeah, again, another friend of Ian's, a girl called Josephine Kronholm. She's a big jazz singer in Scandinavia, has a very particular tone of voice. There's a lot of really wonderful singers in Norway, and they all have this very particular, very fragile sound in their voice. They all sound like they're sort of on the edge of tears singing, and it's a very beautiful sound.
My question is, you mentioned J.K. Rowling earlier, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on Mr. Harry Potter.
well, Dave actually gets to be a production designer on Harry Potter now. He's been he did all the spidery things in the last movie.
I did spiders, and I did, on the new one, the screamer guys. I can't remember what they're called, the sort of floaty, screamy guys. And the what are they called?
Dementors.
What I heard was humph. So I'm sure that's right. I'm sure that's absolutely correct. And the hippogriffs. A little bit of work on the hippogriffs. Trying to get them to work, and I still don't think they got them to work. Very funny front legs, hippogriffs. It's all right writing that stuff in print, but making them work is something else.
It's a question for both of you. I was wondering, although all your work are like children, you probably love them all equally, which one do you like the best?
Well, I think of the things Dave's done separately, I like a short story of his in the back of Pictures That Tick, best of all, with a shard of glass in it. I think that's my favourite of your pieces. That wasn't what he was asking at all. I just thought I'd move it over.
I like a short story called Trollbridge that Neil wrote, and I've always, I even sort of started kicking around ideas of trying to make it into a film of some kind and expanding it a bit. I think it's a lovely story, and I'd love to do something with that at some point.
I always say no when people ask to get the film rights for that, because I sort of, I always figure it's yours. You should come and do something with it sometime. Of the things we've done together, for adults, I'm proudest of Mr. Punch. I think Mr. Punch is one of the coolest things we've done, and I wish that more people had read it. And for kids, I think Wolves and the Walls is just wonderful.
There. White. Red bands. Yeah, you're looking round. It's definitely you. Oh, you have a question. You passed on your question. Wow, that's good.
Do you guys make like normal movies or now?
I think that's the best question we've had. That's a great question. Normal movies. Well, we've only made one movie, so I guess not. But one day I would aspire to making a normal movie. I think that's an honourable thing to do.
I'd love to make a normal movie. I've written scripts for reasonably normal movies, fairly normal movies. The director named Robert Zemeckis is just about to make a film of Beowulf, the English classic, based on an incredibly normal script that I did with a man called Roger Avery, who also co-wrote Pulp Fiction and things. So we're doing Beowulf, and that's pretty normal, except for being kind of weird. I don't think there's anything wrong with making normal movies. I think making normal movies is a good thing.
I did make a normal film. I've made a couple of short films, and one of them is very normal. It's called The Week Before, and it's the week when God was supposed to make everything, but so it's the week before, because on Monday morning he didn't have any ideas and went fishing instead. And I had a game of cards with the devil, who was his neighbour, and won Belgium in the game of cards. So that was pretty normal.
Thank you all very much.